Mhm.
Okay, so Ms. Hunt,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm here today. Thank you for letting me come in
Oh,
and
thank you
work
for
with
coming.
you and observe you. One thing I want to know, I know you're a student teacher here, and I know you're almost done in a month, is my understanding, and that you're primarily, I'm assuming, teaching full-time for the most part?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But just tell me a little bit about, the classroom here. I'm looking around and there's a lot of posters and things like that, but maybe you can just tell me a little bit about the class.
So within our classroom, we do have the posters up, and the posters are some of the things we came back from from Christmas break.
Okay.
We asked the kids what they wanted to see more of and what they wanted to see less of from themselves.
Okay.
So it was a time of self-reflection versus allowing them to make a resolution and things like that. We asked them what they wanted to see more of in the class from themselves. And so some of our answers were less getting frustrated, less talking and disrespect, arguing, fooling around, quitting yelling. One of the other students wrote, less stressing out in suit check. And so it's because they realize sometimes as sixth graders, they can do things to intentionally try to stress us out. So one of the students, he was saying, she doesn't, I love my mentor teacher because she doesn't allow them to see that. Whereas, even when she's irritated, it's still a loving, it's like a very loving voice. And so it just makes me laugh sometimes. It gives me something to kind of get to, because when I get frustrated, you can hear it. Whereas when she gets frustrated, it still sounds light. And so, but then some of the other things that they said they wanted to do more of was more paying attention, organizing, being more helpful, getting better grades, staying awake, and then learning their Lancer code, because here they have their Lancer code, the like loyalty, things like that. It breaks down into an acronym, and they said they wanted to do more with that. And so it was great to see them come back and want a fresh start versus carrying over what they brought from the last quarter.
And how's it going since then, since you guys came back from the
Pretty
break and they've articulated all their ideas and concerns?
It's going pretty well. We're able to hold them accountable to something that they set for themselves.
Okay.
So versus us setting the rules and making it, okay, these are my rules, you need to follow them.
Right.
Now it's our classroom atmosphere.
Okay.
And so they know as a team, they'll work together, whereas for the first 2 quarters, it's me, myself, and I. And I'm in this team. Now they're working as a team to collectively contribute to their goal.
Good.
And it works out a lot. And it allows us, we let them know that there are certain things that we can do, but for us to do them, they have to act in certain ways. So we can create as many team projects and as much teamwork as we would like,
right,
but they have to be able to show and prove that they can work in a team and that they are responsible enough to be able to be left on their own without direct teacher constant supervision, like we're all going to do number 1 now, we're all going to do number 2 now. So they have to be able to work as a group and collectively get it done and have a finished product versus us allowing you to have 3 days to work on a project and we get nothing.
Right.
So it allows them to be accountable for not just themselves, but their teams. And even more than just their teams, for the whole class. Because you'll see certain, even if they're friends, they'll see their friend off task and they're like, man, get it together. And so instead of us constantly like raining down the hammer, they'll do it themselves. And they're starting to learn to govern themselves and help themselves. And you're starting to see, because we move their teams a lot, we try not a lot. If we see that this person probably will be more productive in this group, we start to move them around just piece by piece or group by group. We're actually working on a complete new seating chart so that when they do come back, usually when they come up off of a break, like a 5-day weekend or spring break or Christmas break, new seating chart, start fresh, because they start to get really comfortable in their teams.
Right.
And now it's that people who weren't talking to each other at the beginning of the year are now starting to collaborate and even give pencils. Whereas at the beginning of the year, they were like, yeah, no, I don't want you to have my pencil, it's my pencil.
Right.
But instead of them giving their ID to Ms. Suchek and having to get one, the kids were like, oh, well, you can just use mine, which is something we didn't see very much at the beginning.
The sharing is like a
Yes.
community. And they're sixth graders, so they're coming in from elementary, some different elementary schools and theater schools and things like that. So tell me about, I know I'm coming in tomorrow at 9:30. What period is that?
Third.
Okay.
That's our block period, so it's going to be our longest period.
Okay. And for block, so you have them for 70 minutes, 90 minutes? 80. Okay.
84, yes.
Yeah. No, I couldn't remember 80 something. Yeah, you're right.
84 minutes,
Mhm.
okay. And so oncoming in at the beginning, tell me about, well, first of all, just tell me about the students in that period. Like, do you have any special education students? Is it all boys or?
We have a lot more boys than we do girls in most of our periods,
Yeah.
and a majority of them. So
Okay.
when we do have the girls, we try not to specifically put like all the girls in this area or one girl per 3 boys. We try not to do it that way, so it's not
Right,
punishing them and not allowing them to sit near anyone else who is a girl,
right,
but
And it's predominantly male.
predominantly male.
Yeah.
okay.
And so then in third period, we do have a few behaviors,
Okay,
but not to the point to where it becomes so disruptive that the whole class is off task.
mhm,
If it is one person, it's usually like maybe 1 or 2 students, but even in that community, you'll see another student saying, hey, get on task.
I told him to do that.
I
you
told
know,
him, I told him
yeah.
to stop, Miss Hunt. I told him. And
right,
even today, it was just, I had to step in because it was, these two tend to, with each other. Like, Miss Hunt, I told him to stop. Miss Hunt, I told him to quit. And it'll be, I said something, and then they'll jump in on the back of it. And then I had to explain to them, like, there are only 2 authorities here, so you can assist, but you can't tell them what to do.
right.
You can try to help to rein them back in, but it's not your responsibility because you're a student. You
Right.
still need to get your work done, and when you're getting off task, because they're off task,
Mhm.
then you need to let me know. And especially since you all are on the other sides of the room, you're yelling at him all the way over here. And some days when we're all working as a group,
Right.
and it's like a lot of noise, it's fine. But when we're all silently getting ready for a test,
Right,
you're now the students who are mentally preparing for the test, they're snapped out of that because you're screaming across the room. So we had to address it, and once it was addressed, that was it.
right.
Which is one thing I appreciate about all of our periods.
Mhm,
They have a level of respect for the authority in this room
mhm,
because we've built that community to where they know that I'm the authority, but they also know that I'm someone who's fun. I'm someone who's fun to be around and who wants to teach them and who wants to see them succeed, who wants to push them into the next level
right.
without being overbearing or being condescending or anything like that. So we find those things that we bond with, like with our music or with the dance or whatever. When they come into the classroom, I play my Pandora, but I tell it to cut off all the explicit lyrics.
Mhm.
And I'll play, if one of the kids says, Miss Hunt, can we play this type of music tomorrow? Absolutely. Can we play this type of music right now? Absolutely. So when they're working in their groups, the music is on, but not so high that it's like chaos
Right.
noise. And as they get louder, the music gets lower. And because they want to hear it, they'll start talking lower.
Right.
Not that you can't have the discourse, but when we're screaming at the
Right.
person across from us, that's when it becomes disruptive.
So-
And so it all works out.
So let me go back, you said you had more boys than girls, and just a
Mhm.
few students that have some behavioral challenges,
Yes.
or, do you have any students that are like 504, special education, or maybe they're in the RTI process for need?
To my knowledge.
Okay. And then how many kids would you say you have on average, or in that particular class?
I would say between 24,
Yeah, that's
24,
what,
25,
yeah.
24 to 25, depending on
depending on
the
the
attendance in the day and everything like that.
Normally, in any given class, we have maybe 1 to 4 kids absent. And on a Friday,
Yeah.
Forget it.
Nobody's-
It's kind of hit or miss.
it's pretty much the same people are gone every Friday.
Okay. It's like a chronic.
It really seems like
absence
it.
or problem.
Every
It's a 3-day weekend.
Friday.
Okay, so just to kind of recap what you said, you have 24 to 25 students, mostly boys, not too many really behavioral concerns, a little
Mhm.
bit, but for the most part, it sounds like it's managed, not sometimes by the students, but
Mhm.
more so because the students have realized that they need to allow you, both of you, to step in as needed, because you
Mhm.
guys are the ones who can make the decisions on
Yes.
what happens or who gets moved or if there's a consequence or whatever. But it also sounds like the students trust you,
Yes.
because what you were saying is, you allow them to play music and they want to get their work done. They'll kind of even quiet down when the music's being played. And so the fact that they responded to you also when you pointed out, like, you can't manage everybody, you're not the adult, you're the student, but it sounds like they trust you and they have a respect for probably both of you
Yes.
to do what's needed as far as, whether it's academic or behavioral concern. Okay, so tell me about tomorrow, the lesson. What is the lesson? What's the focus or the objective?
So our objective, a few of the things that we're working on right now are author's perspective, author's purpose, and learning to cite. Well, we have the week to work on author's purpose, author's perspective, and citing textual evidence.
Okay.
Because they took a test today.
Okay.
And last week we worked on citing textual evidence, and we're going to carry that into this week. So the first thing you're going to see is them reading, and they do 2 to 3 Achieve articles a week.
Okay.
And in that week, they're supposed to complete 2 to 3. And I'll pull one of the articles and print it out for them, so they have something physically in front of them versus just an iPad. And then they have to go through and underline the claim and then find evidence to support that claim. And then the next block period, they'll take that and they will turn it into a paragraph summarizing what the claim is, but they have to cite the textual evidence within the paragraph. And we've given them the paragraph format. They did it last week, so we're just carrying it over to this week to make sure they got it. And then we are going to cover, in their evaluate scores, it shows us what they've missed and what standards we should work on. And those were a couple of the standards that Evaluate was saying, these are what they missed, this is what you should work on. So they are going to be talking about author's purpose and author's perspective. We're going to be doing, they're going to watch a video, but I'm not going to allow the woman to talk because she takes a really long time to explain it.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the talking, but I'm going to give them a sheet that has like the filler notes. So they have to fill in the words as it comes across the screen, which keeps them actively engaged.
Okay.
But I'll be the one speaking to them, and then I'll give them the opportunity to talk within their groups about where they've seen this before. Because we'll be talking about persuade, inform, entertain. They've covered this information before in previous classes, as well as in 5th grade. But because we're missing that on the standard, I'm going to give them time to talk about it as a group, because maybe it's that they understand it, but they didn't know how to apply it. So that'll assist versus teaching the test. We're trying to teach the standards to assist with what they're looking for and what they need to fill in the pieces. But upon their discourse, after they take their notes, we are going to do a color activity where each group, I have them all stand up and line up with their friends.
Okay.
And then they're given different color cards within their friends.
Okay.
And then they have to go find their card groups so that all friends are not together in the same group, because they will do that. So then they have to separate and to go to different groups. And in that group, they have to match if it was a positive perspective, a negative perspective, whether this was to inform, this small 3 sentences was to inform you, entertain you, or persuade you. And then they have to match 2 of the definitions. So in all, it's 7 cards. It's like a matching game.
Okay.
And once they work as a group, they have to discuss why they believe that this passage is this, why they believe that this passage is that. So that also teaches them how to discuss and agree and disagree without having to say, well, no, that sucks, that's stupid, that's not right. So we're trying to teach them to have proper discourse while respecting others' opinions, and then backing up their own opinions based off of the knowledge from their notes that we just took. So then after that, they're going to move from their table. They'll all have the same cards, but they're going to move from their table to another table to see if that group agreed with what their group said, just by based off of looking at what that group has placed on the table.
Okay.
And then they have to discuss, did they get the same thing that we did, and why do we agree or disagree with what they wrote? Yes, as a whole group.
You said, I'm just gonna stop you for a second,
you're
because
fine.
you said a lot, but
Oh,
there's
sorry.
some things that, no, that's okay. I'm really excited to see tomorrow's lesson. But one thing, there's just some things that I don't know about. So one of the things you said the evaluate scores, the students have some gaps or some holes from what they should already know, and it sounded like they've already been taught some of the strategies and some of the information, but yet when they're tested on evaluate, is evaluate like a computer program that
It's a
measures?
computer-based program
Okay.
that they take every month.
Is it, okay, so, and you guys use it for progress monitoring to see that those gaps are filled in?
It's standards based.
Okay.
And a lot of our standards are spiraling standards, or they just build up on. So when Ms. Hunt said it's stuff they probably already know, it's something they've heard before in 4th grade and 5th grade. But it's obviously, since we're not performing well in those standards,
Okay.
we're readdressing them.
Is that, school-wide?
Yes.
Okay, so
And
it's
so
not
it's-
just sixth grade, it's sixth, seventh,
Oh.
and.
Six, seven, eight.
Okay.
Yeah, it's school-wide. I believe almost all of CCSD is using Evaluate at this point because it's starting to help with SBAC prep and everything like that. But with
Okay.
Evaluate, they take it every month, but every other month.
Mhm.
So November and January test on the same standards, but not the same, with the same questions.
Right.
And then January and March test on the same questions, but not the same standard. So it skips every other month, so we're looking at standards from January that were missed.
Right.
And they're getting ready to prep to take them, but we're not prepping them specifically for the test.
Okay,
We're trying to get them prepped for what they're going to see in SBAC, because one of their standards is to be able to cite textual evidence and use textual evidence to back up whatever claim they believe is within this article. And so we're
Okay.
trying to make sure we hammer that home, and then for them to understand why the author is speaking this way, why only this information is covered, and then even explaining to our second period earlier today, which is our advanced class. I tried things on the advanced class, and then once I see that they can, that the lesson went well or that they understand it,
Mhm.
then I'm able to modify what I need to,
Mhm.
and then take it to my general population. And so, when working with my advanced class, they were telling me things and explaining all the information. When we made our anchor chart, I filled it in based off of their answers, so, and it went really well, so I'm excited to see it going on.
Okay, and so then I'm just gonna review what you said already,
Mhm.
just to make sure I'm clear, so tomorrow when I come in, I'm on the same page and I don't have to interrupt you. So the objective, they took a test today,
Today, they took
or maybe it was yesterday, depending
No,
on your
today they-
schedule.
oh no,
It's
today
an
they're
assessment.
taking an assessment on the book that they're reading.
Yeah.
Oh,
on
the
a
novel, okay, where the
But
red fern grows, I
yes.
see that, yeah, okay.
But their assessment that they took with Evaluate, they took it, they're not taking it with us, they're taking it with their other English
Oh,
teacher.
I see, their assessment that they took is not, you said it's on this, but not on Evaluate.
No, this, the one that we took today, this
No.
test, that's
On the novel.
on the novel.
Like a
But,
chapter or
yes.
something,
Mhm.
okay, gotcha.
but with Evaluate, the Evaluate test, that's something that they had
Okay.
to take religiously.
Right.
What's on our
That's
standards.
the one a month or whatever.
Mhm.
But for tomorrow, so what you're focusing on, your objective tomorrow is looking at author's purpose, perspective, and then citing textual evidence.
Mhm.
And the students are going to, well, you're gonna play the video at the beginning, it sounds like,
Mhm.
and you're gonna do what I would call a close activity. That's what I'm familiar with. It may be a little bit different, but you're saying you have like a sheet, worksheet, whatever you wanna call it, where there's words missing, and the students are watching the video to fill in the blanks of whether it's the vocabulary words or the content that you want them to be
Mhm.
aware of.
But instead of them watching just the video, as the video plays, I'm going to be explaining it and
Okay,
pausing where
right.
necessary and having
She
them
said
fill it.
she takes
Takes
too
a
long.
long
I mean, you know what you wanna say
Yes.
perhaps, so that's why you're just kind of,
Mhm. And that's where their citing
tailoring it a
textual
little bit.
evidence is gonna come from when they're having their discussions.
right.
They need to refer back to their notes
Okay.
on what we covered.
Okay, so that's good reference for them.
That's the
So they
plan.
can use that maybe before raising their hand and asking you all the time.
Yes, I try to give them something to physically see.
Yeah.
And then even if, with our instructions, I'll leave the instructions, I put all my instructions in a PowerPoint, and
Okay.
then I leave the PowerPoint up on the board, so just in case you do get finished early with whatever work you're working on,
Mhm.
they're able to see the PowerPoint, so instead of, Miss, I'm done, Miss, I'm done, it's already on the board, and they already know, as soon as they come in,
Wow.
when you'll see the lights off, as soon as you, when you're here, you'll see the
Okay.
lights off. On the board, it'll say, grab your folder, please sit quietly.
Okay,
Today in history, I play Today in History, which is like a minute and 30 seconds.
okay.
It tells them what happened
Oh,
in history over, from today's date.
sure.
And that, as soon as it cuts on, usually, I've noticed that whenever a video's on, even if they're not engaged,
Right.
their voices will cut off. And so it automatically prepares us to get ready to get started. And so they already know that it's gonna play. So as soon as the bell rings, I cut it on, they grab the rest of their stuff, log into whatever they need to, and then they're free to go.
Right. So it sounds like the transitions.
That's my transition to get into the classroom, into your seat, ready to roll.
right, without you being the start,
Without
Last
having to
period.
yell
Okay.
and things.
right?
Because I've noticed if I'm constantly talking, it'll eventually just drown me out.
Mhm.
So,
And then the students, after the video and after they had their notes, that's when they're going to get their cards
yes.
to break up into their groups, and then in their groups, they'll have the seven different, I'll say vocabulary words with the
passages
passages,
and
there you go.
definitions.
Okay, and that's what they have to match up. And in their small group have to be able to defend why they matched up.
Yes.
With accepting others' perspectives and opinions, but maybe defending theirs. And you said, you know, trying to get them to really have, you said, proper discourse.
Yes.
So making sure that they can have a good conversation about what they chose and why. And then you're going to bring them back together as a whole group.
Yes.
And share out and see what the different groups came up with, whether
Mm-hmm.
they all have the same thing, different things. Okay. Is there anything I missed? Because I don't want to miss anything, so.
And then,
that
so
you
because
said-
tomorrow's our block period, that's
Mhm.
the first activity that we're doing.
Oh, sure.
So because it's 80 minutes, that's the first activity.
Mhm.
But then with this test that we're grading right now,
Mhm.
we're gonna review it.
Okay,
We are going to go over their Socrative quiz because they are getting ready to leave. We wanna tie up all the loose ends so
Sure.
that we're not coming back and asking them to remember what you got on that test
Mhm.
from 10 days ago. And
Right,
so we wanna review because they did take a Socrative test. It's a quiz online
okay.
that I created about, we were working on formal and informal language, plot diagram, and we worked on that for a week.
Okay,
And that was last week, and they took the Socrative test, and the reason why we went over those things was because Evaluate let us know that was the standard, that they weren't understanding the difference between formal and informal language, as well as they were missing the climax and the stories. And so part of their standards is that they are supposed to be able to identify the climax and other plot elements in a story.
Mhm.
And they were missing those questions. And so we used it as our warm-up activity to
Sure.
get them just to refresh their memory and help them to understand what formal and informal meant. And so we're gonna review that quiz as
Okay.
well as this test, as well as this activity. So I'd rather have too much to do than not enough.
That's
Mhm.
her mentor teacher's
Yes.
fault. I always tell her to have too much than too little.
So we have like 6 different activities. But
But plus, another thing too is I just recently came back from a Kagan training and I'm a strong believer in getting them moving. So like, it kind of all goes together. And going from one thing to the next and not just like, you know what I mean?
Well,
So,
one thing you said, and I don't know, you know, how frequent people still use Kagan, because once you have something that's really well known, it seems like there's other groups that do something similar, but it's called something different. But when you said everybody gets a colored card and then they have to, right
It's like
away,
a brain
I went
break.
right to
Yeah,
Kagan,
Kagan,
like that's
yeah.
kind of a Kagan activity,
Yes.
getting different kids to work with different
yes,
groups of
absolutely.
students
Yeah.
and work on those social skills along with obviously the academic activity that you have
Absolutely.
planned, so I
And-
get excited about that.
When you see their review is going to be them, again, having to get up. And so the different areas, one corner will be corner A, one corner will be corner
Okay.
B,
Yeah.
corner C, corner D, and then they're going to have a little card where they're going to write A, B, C, or D based
Mhm.
off of the question that we
Okay.
posted with Socrative,
Mhm.
as well as with these questions.
Mhm.
Because some of their questions were A, B, C, D, multiple choice, some were required an answer. And so more than likely I'm going to, because they just took the test and because we're still reviewing the answers, I have to see where we necessarily need to review
Mhm.
on citing text, because they're citing the textual evidence, which I'm more than excited about because we worked on that for 2 weeks. But with the Socrative test, they're going to be getting up and going to the different corners. And if you chose A, go to corner A, and then talk with them about why you all chose corner A.
Right.
And then we'll come back together and they have to show me their answer when they get over there, because most times they'll just float
Go
with the
with
group,
honeys.
go with
Yeah.
the group,
Right.
and just float. And so you have to be able to back your answer, even if you're the only one, because you may be the only one who's right. So we have them go to their corners, and then they have to discuss, and then they'll pick. Typically I pick someone who hasn't spoken to me yet,
Mhm.
and I usually give them that little bit of wait time.
Mhm.
Good mom strategies, give them that wait time.
Mhm.
Be a cold call on those who aren't necessarily participating,
Mhm.
and then making sure, I let my students know I require 100% participation. So you sitting there not answering doesn't help me, because if the student knows all the answers, it's great. If you know none, that doesn't help either one of us. So you'll see them, if you stay for the entire 8 minutes, you'll see them going through that activity, which gets them up and moving and gets us flowing and talking and everything.
Well, that's what you said is just what I was thinking. So for the first activity, I'll say 40 minutes, I'm not sure how you have, how much time you need for each lesson, how will you know the students either are getting it or where you want them to be? Because I know you said you worked with the advanced students, and by their answers and what they shared, you felt like they really had a strong foundation and they were able to move past. So you were really excited about seeing what happens with these students tomorrow. But how will you know they have got it in a sense? Like, what's your
My plan.
formative or summative? Yeah, what's your plan?
With my formative assessment, I tend to allow them to talk, and I just bounce from group to group. And I just, granted, most times they just think I'm walking around or walking to go get something, because I try not to let them know that I'm listening in the conversation, because if
Okay.
they know I'm listening in, the conversation will change. Or they'll just all stop and stare at me because I'm the teacher. So I tend to just walk around, and as I'm just walking through to go get something from here, go get something from here, I just pass 3 groups and listening in on the conversation. And if I do have a question, I'll stop and ask.
Right.
And then as we go through each piece, I typically tend to, all the ones, tell me, what is persuasion?
Okay.
All my number 2s, what's informing?
Okay.
All my number 3s, talk to your group about what's entertainment. Okay, all my number 4s, what's author's perspective? What did we just go over?
Okay.
And so, and then at the end of the class, typically for our summary, sum up,
Uh-huh.
we tend to, it's not necessarily the formative assessment, but still formative, because I'm not gonna have them sit down and write anything.
Okay.
But this is more of an activity to where I can see where you are and then guide you along without having to specifically lecture you through everything. Because this is that you should have already seen in 4th and 5th grade. This is more of a review before you're going to see it again.
Okay.
So my plan is to continue to formatively assess them,
Okay.
and then we'll see, because they're going to be seeing author's perspective, and I believe coming up in the next couple of chapters, they're going to be seeing author's perspective and author's purpose coming up in the next comprehension that we're asking them,
We're
with
gonna talk about it, yeah.
the comprehension questions and the next discussions and analyzations of the book. That's what they're going to be focused on. So this is just like a starting point,
Okay.
launching point to get them ready for that. So the summative assessment will be their following assignments. Once they come
Okay.
back, we do a quick review and then we move on from there.
Okay, so for tomorrow, it is more of an, even though it is review, I mean, they've seen it in other grades and stuff, but it's more a starting point is what you're saying.
Yes.
And so you'll be able to gauge where the students are, either collectively as a whole group, or maybe if individual students need more assistance by going from group to group, and then when you're calling out like the number 1s, the number 2s, you'll have an idea of who's got what they
Exactly.
need to say, and maybe who needs a little more help or support or whatever. Okay.
And one of the things I've noticed, when we did our plot diagram, I gave them their own note sheet.
Okay.
And it was the plot diagram, and where the lines were listed for the plot, I had them fill in the notes. We went over it as a class. Okay, will someone, as a group, talk about what setting is? Okay, who wants to share? And that required each group to share. It's not just one student from one group. The number 2s share what this is, number 3, so that everybody's participating, so you have to know an answer.
Right.
And as they're answering, I'm writing in the notes on the board, and they're writing it, and they have their own note sheet. So even if you don't specifically know the answer, I teach them to use your resources.
Okay.
This note sheet is your resource. So even if you don't know the answer or you draw a blank, go back to that sheet, and then I celebrate them for using their resources, because one of the things we've noticed is that they don't, when they're doing their Achieve articles, they don't refer back to the text, even though it's right there, and that's where their answers are. So teaching more test-taking strategies. So it's a lot in one area, but they don't realize that it's a lot.
Right.
I just do.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of conversation and checking for understanding
Yes.
through conversation, because we're a Zoom school. Our big overall
just go.
like standard as a school is to get our students speaking, because we want to move up those WIDA scores and we want them to become more proficient. It's not going to happen unless they have that opportunity to speak. So that's kind of me too. We have to let them talk. We have to let them talk. So yeah, and it's true.
They're
Yeah.
more engaged when
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
talking. And I'm noticing that as the semester goes on, like even with our second period, even though they're advanced, they'll tend to get off track. And then when it's time to answer questions, because they're already advanced or accelerated, they don't need to talk about this. So they'll talk about whatever, and then they'll come back to it. But now they know that Ms. Hunt has extremely awesome sauce ears. So I'll walk around, and even across the room, I'll just ask, or as a group,
Focused, yeah.
we'll come back together and get it together. And so, and I tend to just lean in on their conversations
Mhm.
as I'm going around. It's not, I'm gonna sit here and let you all talk, okay, now you're done talking, let me get up. I'm
Right.
going through, and then I'm asking them, okay, well, why do you believe that? Well, do you agree with your teammates? And then I tend to ask them like some type of controversial question. Even though they're in 6th grade,
Mhm.
they can talk about controversial things. And what's earlier today, I was so excited because one of my students, I asked them, I said, whether I believe that Donald Trump is a great president or a horrible president, you'll never know.
Right.
I'm not gonna tell you. But whether you believe that, if you believe he's great and I believe he's horrible, I mean, it is what it is. If you believe he's horrible and I believe he's great, how can you tell me that my opinion
Mhm.
isn't worth it? How can you prove to me? And they're like, well, it's because you're wrong. Well, how can you say I'm wrong?
You're-
It's
Sounds
my
like you're
perspective.
asking them, and what is your evidence, what is your
Exactly.
information to
Mhm.
support your reason?
And so even in them having to discuss that,
Mhm.
it forces a lot of them to pick up and talk.
Mhm.
And most times if I notice as I'm walking around that they're not, that I see the same people talking, it'll be, I one day was like, okay, number 4s, I want to hear your answers. And then they'll start talking. I'll go around and I'll give them 10 seconds
Mhm.
to just talk about entertaining literature. And then I'm like, okay, number 3s, you need to pick up where number 4 just left off. So that you have to listen to them,
Mhm.
and then you have to be able to carry on that conversation. And then even if it's, I disagree with whoever number 4 is,
Right.
you pick up and then and I'll just switch the numbers around so that they don't automatically assume, okay, well, I'm number 2, she's on number 3, so I'm next. It's, you need to be listening at any given time. So once you add that extra element,
Mhm.
I notice that a lot of them will get on task.
Mhm.
And then I'm able to even go around and listen in even more. And their conversations get pretty deep. Even though they're in 6th grade, their conversations aren't as shallow as I would have expected.
Right. But that's what you want for discourse,
I
is the way
know.
I'm understanding it, so
Mhm.
that's
It's
a
just,
good thing.
it shocks me sometimes when I hear
Right.
their conversations.
Mhm.
Like one of my students, he was saying, when I was asking him, why is his opinion more important? He's like, it's not more important. He said, your opinion is as important as mine is. He said, but this is my opinion. And I said, well, how can you convince someone to change their opinion? He said, well, you shouldn't necessarily try to force them to change their opinion, but you can talk. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And so you see, I have those pride moments.
That's good, that's really good. Okay, so tell me what you want me to focus on tomorrow. Let's just say I'm there for the first, like, lesson.
Mhm.
What do you want me to focus on? What
I
are you
was thinking
thinking?
about that.
Okay.
I was thinking about that before you left. I still don't have it. In my mind, I was like, I know she's coming back,
Mhm.
and I know I need to have this answer. And I'm like, what do I want her to focus on?
What about depth of knowledge? Do you do that? DOK levels?
No. I wouldn't be good for me, just
Okay.
because,
You haven't been
I don't
here.
have that, I'm not a teacher right now. So
Gotcha.
my level of understanding of that isn't that good, and I think that would just be,
Gotcha.
wouldn't
Okay.
be helpful for either one of us, but
Gotcha.
otherwise I could.
Yeah, no, I was
Um,
just curious.
yeah.
Because I know for me, that's something I always
Mhm.
wonder. I'm like, am I where I need to be?
Mhm.
Same with metacognition.
Mhm.
Those are, but I'm just throwing old timer stuff at you, so.
So, no, that's okay, that's a
Yeah.
really good question, because it could be, if this was something that I was here all the time,
Uh-huh.
the focuses would probably change,
Mhm.
and they would get really in-depth. I mean, what do you want to focus on? If that's on the NEPF, that would be something that
Yeah,
could be
absolutely.
focused on.
Yeah.
So it could be that, it could be, like the number of questions, the level, if you're thinking of Bloom's taxonomy, which was kind of
It's
where
kind
I'm,
of, yeah,
kind of in the
DOK, depth
same
of knowledge,
area,
yeah.
that's what that means. Who you question, because it sounds like to me, you interact with your students a lot, and you're trying to ask them a lot to give you feedback, informally, like maybe they don't know you're really listening to gauge their level of understanding. But that could be it too, as far as, do you get all of the students to actually participate
That's right.
to you in one, at some point kind of directly, without you just eavesdropping? Is it something that you're getting kids to answer? Could be that, it could be the level of
Level of
questioning,
engagement.
level of engagement.
That's what I'm
That's a good one too, yeah.
Because in my
What
mind,
does that look like? Like, what do you, tell me specifically what you mean, just so I'm on the same page.
when I'm at the board talking, as I'm scanning the crowd,
Okay,
of course, when I'm scanning, they're looking at me.
right,
But then there are those moments when I try to push for more, and I don't know if I'm actually reaching the more that I'm seeking.
Okay.
for them to be engaged, because a part of Kagan was that they wanted like a larger majority. When we went to our Kagan training, it was within a specific classroom, and it was their coordinators over Kagan for their school sat down and spoke with us, and then they went through this whole training with us in this whole packet, and they were saying that at least, I think they said 50% or more of the class needs to be engaged at any given time. And in my mind, I try to employ that,
Okay.
but in reality, is it really only 25% if only one student is talking at every single group, and only one student is the one discussing everything?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to push past that,
Mm-hmm.
but even in my strategies, or even in, okay, number ones,
Mm-hmm.
I want to, well, number ones, you have 10 seconds to discuss. Even at that moment, only 25% of the class is talking.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, maybe I'll do shoulder partners. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I know shoulder partners, I know
Yeah.
like the partner that's across from you. I might,
Might have 50%
To get 50%.
participating if you're doing the
Yeah.
shoulder partners.
and so in my mind, like I know the strategies, and it's like I know when I leave the office,
Mm-hmm.
I reflect and I'm like, you could have did that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would want to. That's where one of my focuses is. To
How long have
develop
you
it
been
different.
using Kagan, or when did you get your training for Kagan? Like
That was about a year.
Okay.
But I've been subbing within the district. I was subbing within the district for 3 years,
Okay.
and then I went into my student teaching. So
Okay.
and when I long-term subbed, I was at a professional development school on UNLV's campus. I was
Oh,
at
okay.
Paradise.
Okay.
And so because that was the school that I was subbing at,
Mm-hmm.
I was a tutor there, so
Mm-hmm.
they introduced me to a lot of things that I saw before, or they were telling me strategies, but not specifically naming it because they knew I hadn't reached that point in my education yet.
Right.
So I've been using Kagan for a while,
Okay.
but I just didn't know that that was the name of it.
Sure.
Because my principal, Christy Cole, at the time, she didn't want to try to tell me, okay, well, these are Kagan strategies, this is what you need to do.
Right.
She was just telling me, okay, well, maybe you want to have them talk to their shoulder partners. Maybe you want to have them do this. Maybe you want to allow them 3 seconds for them to have think time and things like that. And so.
Because I heard you
she-
say wait time earlier,
Mhm.
and that's a big thing too with Kagan, giving them kids a
Yes.
chance to compose their answer or however they're participating.
Exactly.
So.
And that's one of the things I try to teach my kids, like the ones who are constantly ready
There's
with an
always-
answer.
yeah.
There's always those 3 who are like, Miss, call on me, I know it. And
Shout
I'm just
it
like,
out. Yeah.
and I let them know. And I use me and Ms. Luchek all the time. You'll hear a lot of examples
Yeah.
with me and Ms. Luchek in them, because I don't want to call on the kids to try to make people point them out or think like, oh, they're the ones she's talking about.
Right.
But I'll say Ms. Luchek tends to think a lot faster than I do.
Mhm.
Sometimes it takes me a little while to process your question, formulate my answer, and then put it in words that you're going to understand outside of my brain.
Right.
And so I let them know it does happen with adults, and
Oh, I
because of that, we have to give them some time to
Right.
formulate their answer, and then I let them know, I'll wait till everyone's hand is up, and then I'm randomly gonna call on someone, and whoever gets called on, that's who I'm looking for the answer from. And it won't be the student that I know wasn't paying attention.
Mhm.
I don't always call on them, because I don't want to like completely embarrass them. But then after that moment, I'll call on someone who I know knows the answer, but just is too shy to answer. But there are other times when after that, the student knows she's looking for an answer. She's possibly gonna call on me. My hand has to be up because she's gonna stand there and wait the minute until my hand is up. And then it requires them to have an answer for me from there on without having to specifically embarrass them or call them out for not paying attention.
So for that, for level of engagement, I'm trying to think through how I can track that for you. And I'm thinking, and you guys let me know what you're thinking, but it sounds like as you described your lesson today, there's different parts.
Mhm.
You know, with the worksheet, when they're writing down their video, they're probably doing that independently.
Yes.
But as you're transitioning with the cards and the
Mhm.
small group and the whole group, that's when I might see more
Yes.
engagement. So I don't know if it's like the activity that I could track, kind of like what you're saying, shoulder partners, or no, she called on the ones, or whatever, and
Mhm.
then put like the percent,
Yes.
and then give that to you from the start to the end, to just see throughout your lesson the different participation levels.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll try that. I haven't tracked that before, so that's going to be good for me to try and see how to, because I also have to keep up with you and pay attention to who's doing what, but that's okay. This is a good thing. And then maybe something else will come out of that neither one of us were aware of, but yet hopefully will be helpful for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that sound okay? Okay. Maybe one thing you guys could get me is a seating chart if you have one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for
That
third
would
period.
help.
She's under.
Okay. Is there anything else you think I need as far as like a worksheet or a handout or anything, just so as you're teaching tomorrow, I kind of have a frame of reference?
Well,
Or
typically,
anything
what
I need ahead of time, you think?
the information that we're gonna be going over, because that's the anchor chart, the one that says
Oh,
author's purpose. That's the one that we created for second period, because
Okay.
instead of giving them notes,
Mhm.
because they're accelerated, I know that whatever they're missing,
Mhm.
typically my other class is missing. And
Okay.
as we were describing, I now know
Mhm.
where I need to fill in the blanks and
Okay.
where my blanks need to be, if that makes any
Sure.
sense. So with the worksheet, I'll have a worksheet for you right in the morning, but
Okay.
it's going to be that information, like where it says convince or to believe, they're gonna have to write the word persuade.
Okay.
It's gonna be literally blank and then the definition, it's gonna be convince or, and then they have to fill in believe and convince as they go, so.
Okay.
it'll
So
just
I'll
be-
have that tomorrow, and
Yes,
that will
ma'am.
be similar to that.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then other than that, everything else will just be the students pretty much using.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then I can get you a printout of actually I'll do it when we're done, the printout of the cards that they're
would
going to be using.
helpful.
They're gonna be, they're on colored sheets because again, pass
Yeah.
out the colors, kids
Sure.
color their activities, but I'll give you a copy of that.
Okay, perfect.
So you can see exactly what they're looking for. The little passages are about this big,
Okay.
and so
So
it's
like
not,
a paragraph or something, a little more than a paragraph, but,
not even that.
okay.
Because I put it in 12 or 14 font,
Okay.
so that they can clearly see it, but
Right.
it's not a lot. So that, because the activity's not meant for us to sit and do this for 30 minutes.
Yeah,
It's meant to be, like, we're gonna spend 5 minutes doing this, we're gonna spend a couple minutes going to the different sections to see if they got the same answers we did.
okay.
Maybe we need to reevaluate when we get back over here and change our answers around a little bit, and then to discuss the rest, so.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
How do you feel about the lesson?
No, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see your lesson. I haven't been a teacher for 10 years, but I did teach for 10 years. And my 10 years, the 9 out of 10 years were in the 6th grade reading classroom.
You don't look
awesome.
like you're
Yeah.
teaching for 10
And
years.
towards the end of my career, I did incorporate Kagan for the last 3 years. And I loved it. I mean, it was hard
It
work.
works.
Mhm.
Right,
It
because you
works.
constantly have to think about, like you said, how do you group kids? What are the different activities? You know, things get stale.
Right.
And we kind of get stuck sometimes, certain times of year, and kind of just get stuck. But the kids want to talk.
Mhm.
The brain is social, and you might as well get that channeled, or, you know, so that they're talking about what you want them to talk about, so.
There's a couple of things I recently changed them, so this is the,
Oh, okay.
the
The
newest.
general.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and if needs be, I can, because I went in to change them already for next quarter.
Oh, that's why you
Because
have that
I do the grouping, and you can ask Ms. Hunt, it takes me forever,
Yes.
because I have to have the 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't put 2 1s in a group, you can't have 2 4s
so
in
that's
a
why you
group,
see
and
the-
it is just so.
These little pieces on the desk, so
Yeah.
so we know,
It is
and they know.
painstaking,
Yeah.
but you already know that, so.
No, but it's a good thing, and what
Yeah.
what I really liked or appreciated was for those kids that, if, to me, in a traditional classroom, they probably never spoke, and they didn't interact, because for some students, they just don't have the social or the family backing to help them have those skills when they come to school, and those kids are easy to
Under the radar.
overlook and fly under the radar, and then this seems a little more comfortable. I mean, it's scary at first, but you get to know them better, but they also get to interact with the other kids
They
more,
do.
and hopefully learn along the way, of course, but, so that was my
And most
takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. And as teachers, unfortunately, a lot of us think kids should come, be quiet, and do their work. And they're not necessarily processing that way.
Exactly.
A big eye-opener, I've only gone to one Kagan training, it was an ELL training recently. We kind of did Kagan at JITSTRIP, but I only got like half of a day of training, I kind of got thrown in there. A big eye-opener for me is my daughter, she's 4, and she's gifted. And she was at I wouldn't say traditional, but she was at a drill and kill school in preschool. And they would complain, well, she's not sitting down and tracing letters, and she's not sitting down and doing this, and she's not sitting down and doing that. My daughter can read at 4, and you're telling me that she may not go to kindergarten because she won't sit and trace letters for 20 minutes at a time? And so that was a huge eye-opener for me,
that kids have to move.
We do.
They have to be able to talk, they have to be able to get up. And so this is something that I'm exploring, not only here in the classroom, but in my life. I mean, I moved my daughter to a Montessori school, and it's super expensive, and I don't know how we're gonna continue to pay for that in the future, but, you know, the belief that everyone can just sit and learn, it's not what it's cracked up to be. It really isn't, so.
And that's one of the things I appreciate about, when I think about my own teaching style, when I talk to my students, I let them know, I'm only going to be talking to you for about 5 to 10 minutes. And in that 5 to 10 minutes, I need all of your attention, and then I'm going to let you go off and do whatever you're going to do. And in that, they respect that because they
Yeah.
know we need her instruction because we are not going to know what happens after.
Right.
And then when they come to me and ask me, we're working on teaching them accountability and responsibility
Mhm.
even in 6th grade. So for them, if they come and ask me, okay, miss, we didn't hear what you said. Okay, ask someone else. Ask one of your teammates because I said it very clearly. The room was, nobody was screaming. The room was quiet, so if you did not hear me, it's because you were not paying attention. So that means you need to go and ask someone else within your group. Hopefully somebody got it. And then you'll see them go off and try to figure it out. And they know when Ms. Hunt's talking, or Ms. Lutek is talking, this is probably something that we should listen to because they're going to release us to do something. And then at the end of that, whatever the work is that we're accountable for, that's going to be graded whether we were paying attention or not. And for me, I do a lot of like participation type grades. Like if everyone, when they did their plot diagrams, with their plot diagram, everything was filled out, 10 points. And then by the end of the week, their goal was we watched a Disney short, and then they were supposed to fill in the plot diagram based off of the notes. And with your group knowledge, as a group, you're filling out this entire plot diagram on your own because we've gone over every single aspect of this.
Right.
You have your notes. Your responsibility now is to fill this out. When you turn it in, that's where our points are coming from. So it's not necessarily, I'm giving you a new assignment every day. It's all this is leading up to this one big thing. And it's not a project. It's a single sheet that you've been discussing and building upon and scaffolding for a week.
Right.
And so I'm loving the fact that, because I'm from the generation of sit there, be quiet,
Oh, yeah.
take notes, and then you better take good notes because even the things that weren't on the slideshow, if the professor said it, you need to have it. Because if you don't have it, and I think I'm a great note taker now because of that. But I'm noticing that with my students, I can't do that because when I first was long-term subbing, I tried to just talk for 30, 40 minutes and they'd be off in La La Land. And then I'm sitting here having to have these little mini conferences of getting you all back together and giving you the information that I know I just went over. Whereas now, it's like, let's break up this 40-minute lecture into 10-minute warm-ups every day and then have our final piece on Friday.
Right.
Versus, let me sit and talk for 40 minutes today and then you need to have this final piece today.
Right.
And so I'm loving the fact that it's all coming
It's
together.
all coming together.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Well, thank you. I look forward to coming back tomorrow and
Awesome.
seeing you teach and seeing the kids and seeing them move around and share out. I'm really excited about that. So
I'm excited to
Third
see it.
period's colorful. I like third period. There's a lot of strong good
They're
spirits in there.
they're my funny class. You'll see the.
Hopefully they'll let it